Can I do a mic check? Do I sound okay or do I sound like a robot?
Started. Welcome to this workshop of the Hopkins School Board. I'm Hopkins School Board Chair Jen Bouchard, and we'd like to welcome our community members who are joining us via the YouTube live stream. This workshop discussion will go to approximately 5:30, and then we will have our public hearing for ESSER funding immediately following that. So because we have quite a bit to cover, I will turn it directly over to our superintendent, Dr. Mary Peary Reed, to introduce our holistic safety model update.
Thank you very much, Chair Bouchard, and good evening to all board members, colleagues, community members, and everyone else. We have an important workshop ahead of us with just a couple of agenda items, and we'll head into the first one here. So a little bit more than a year ago, students from our community began petitioning and asking for us to change our school safety model. And this wasn't about being anti-police. However, in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder, students wondered to what degree they had been policed at their school. The debate about regular police presence in schools across our country has been around for a very long time, and it seemed apropos for us to conduct an exploration. In response to student requests for a review of our contract between Hopkins Public Schools and the Minnetonka Police Department, we employed a group of student leaders to lead the exploration and review. And then the Hopkins School Board ultimately did decide to transition from a school-based SRO or school resource officer toward a holistic safety model that did not include a daily physical armed police presence at the high school. And now the additional work has been around reimagining a positive school culture where holistic student safety is realized. And by holistic safety, we mean psychological, social, emotional, mental, and physical safety of our scholars. So here to share more information with us about the work and the progress being made are Elliot Berman, who's a recent Hopkins graduate, class of 21, and Holly Magdens, one of our wonderful staff members. Also with us is Crystal Ballard, our esteemed high school principal. And I'm actually not sure if there are other presenters this evening, but I can have Elliot, Holly, and Principal Ballard take over from here. So welcome to the three of you, and thanks so much for being here and for helping us gain an increased understanding of the work that you've been engaging in.
Yeah, and if there's anything that Holly or Principal Ballard, if you want to jump in at any time, feel free. But I think I will be taking the reins on this one. So give me a second as I share my screen. As you know, on September 1st meeting, the school board decided to not re-sign their contract at the end of 2020 with the Minnetonka Police Department. And so out of that formed both a kind of adult advisory for holistic safety for students and a student seminar. And above, or now what I am presenting, is what the student seminar came up with. It is called Imagine a Police-Free School, Recommendations to Consider for the Hopkins School Board. This is just information items for you guys. Our plan right now for these objectives is to kind of wrap them into student work. And as next year proceeds, if the new group would like to have this as actual goals for the school board, they will come and present them as an action item. But right now, it's just an information item. So I will read our little introduction. Dear HHS School Board, the following was created by a dedicated group of Hopkins High School scholars who voluntarily met twice a week from November 9th, 2020 to January 8th, 2021 to discuss scholars' experiences, research models of police-free schools, explore options, write recommendations on how to move forward to a police-free school at Hopkins. We thank you for your consideration. Respectfully submitted. And I'm going to read all these names because everybody here, everybody right there on that page had a very big part of making paper come together. So George Jackson, a senior who was with me earlier that summer, Elliot Berman, me, Anna Billings, Amelia Carrizales, Elliot Finn, Mila Jama, Lauren Ulvi, Greta Milky, Elise Ford, Rose St. Angelo, Haja Diano, Abhinav Kumar, Sanja Agara, Lane Bell, the teacher, and Shannon Finnegan, the teacher. They advised us through our work. Very great teachers, as some of you know. Lane Bell, I think, teacher is a semifinalist for Teacher of the Year in Minnesota. Our purpose statement. We believe that Hopkins School should be safe and nurturing for all students, teachers, families, and community members. By creating a police-free school and investing in more equitable resources and support, we hope to ensure the safety and physical, mental, and emotional well-being of all. This is George Jackson's introduction. It is not my place to read it. I will leave it on screen for a bit for you all to read it. And it came from him, very personal to him. So I'll give you guys a second to kind of recap it. Thank you. And George is competing in the track and field championships, state championships this upcoming week. So really cheering him on, and hopefully I can get him to send you a video of him reading it for you guys, because it's much more powerful when it comes from him, because it puts a face behind it, puts a human behind it, and he really means all the words that he says. I'm going to highlight the main parts of our recommendations, we centered our recommendations around 3 categories: deprioritize, delegitimize, and decriminalize. Most of these came from the We Can Learn, a call to action for police-free schools by the Advancement Progress Organization, a civil rights organization. So they really helped guide us in our learning, as well as guide us in these recommendations for Hopkins High School and Hopkins school districts as a whole. So I am going to just highlight the major parts in each recommendation. For deprioritize, we recommend that Hopkins public schools partner with staff, students to create a new district policy or policies on how to respond to crises that exhaust all school personnel and resources before involving police. This was a common act already in our high school, but we just want to make sure that it is still, it's on paper, it's something that we want, and it's something that we should all continue to work towards. We recommend that Hopkins Public Schools provide training for all staff and students in areas of crisis prevention, restorative justice, police-free schools, de-escalation, understanding the teenage brain, adultification of BIPOC, culturally responsive curriculum, and culturally responsive mental health needs. Again, Hopkins is a family, Hopkins is a community. We are all there for each other. And part of this recommendation is really making sure that everybody around us, everybody that is our family, everybody that's our community is doing well. And we can all attend to each other because that's what a community does, that's what a family does. We recommend that Hopkins Public Schools hire more culturally relevant mental health professionals, particularly chemical health professionals, and culturally literate BIPOC professionals, and that students should be involved in that hiring process. Principal Ballard has already made major steps in this area involving students in interview processes with new hirees, and we are beyond thankful for Principal Ballard's work in that area. We recommend that Hopkins Public Schools incorporate required student-centered curriculum with a focus on conflict resolution, understanding the criminal justice system, the school-to-prison pipeline, and students' legal rights. Student voice should be centered in the formation of these classes. We also talked about a major part of this being in the Student Handbook. As most of you know, or as some of you know, especially on the policy committee, monitoring committee, we've taken a giant look at our Student Handbook this year and see what resources are on there for students and ways that we can make that better for either mental health or just getting anything they need. If it needs to do with they need reduced lunches, they need to fill out that paperwork, they don't know where to find it. Stuff like that. Just quick, easy information for our students in one place that they can use. Moving on to delegitimize. We recommend that Hopkins Public Schools implement regular student-led restorative justice community building circles and other welcoming practices in order to strengthen our sense of community. Something close to that we did this year is we did culturally relevant circles with big things happening this year. There was lots of hate towards Asian and Asian AAPI, IP, Pacific Islanders. Lots of hate towards them this year, and we wanted them to feel heard and understood and kind of feel that out that we care and we're here for them. And we provided groups, the school provided groups and sessions for everybody to talk everything out and kind of get an understanding for one another. And that was very helpful. So continuing those practices in Hopkins. We recommend that Hopkins Public Schools partner with staff, students to design and implement anti-racist curriculum that teaches students and staff about different cultures, perspectives, experience, customs within all content areas. This is something that Hopkins has done for a long time. Again, we just want to bring it to this generation, bring it to modern, to today, and involve students in the making of those curriculums and our class teachings. We recommend that Hopkins Public Schools to guide current and incoming staff in anti-racism work, to hire more BIPOC staff, and to write policies on how to address racial discrimination, including microaggressions that center student experience and hold staff accountable. Again, this is something that the board someone already committed to, and also has already been practiced throughout the district. And we're completely thankful for that, but just always like to put it down for more. Under our decriminalize, we recommend Hopkins Public Schools partner with students, staff, and outside experts to shift from traditional discipline to restorative justice by building community, limiting the use of suspensions and expulsions, decriminalizing truancy, creating safe spaces for staff and students to learn from their mistakes, focusing on the root causes of behaviors, and allowing for creative ways to address harm. Number 2, we recommend that Hopkins Public Schools end its practices of random drug searches. We are completely grateful that this has already been carried out by district staff and high school staff. This was a big thing that students brought up, and we're completely thankful for that. We recommend Hopkins Public Schools train students to resolve conflict, teach students how to care for their mental health, and amplify student voice in all leadership spaces within the school district, which is a big thing that the school board has committed to, bringing more student voice in wherever it is able to be and when they want it. So we're just want to put that down one more time, and completely thankful for the work that you've all put in. So with that is our recommendation. We will be sending this out to all of you right after the meeting, so you guys can take deeper looks at it. But right now, our schools and our students are working on all of this, putting in curriculum, going about projects with it to make sure that students have the resources they need. So our students are really amazing and already getting ahead of this work and doing it for each other, doing it for our school, doing it for our community to make us better, stronger. So I believe this is the time that I'll take questions unless Holly or Principal Ballard has anything to say.
Well, thank you so much, Elliot. These are really thoughtful and, to me, exciting recommendations. And I'd first like to express gratitude to the students who have been working on this throughout the school year. And then, of course, the staff that has been supporting them in this work. And as I think, structurally, how the board could continue to engage with these recommendations and move toward implementation, or, as you pointed out in your report, continued implementation, right? Because a lot of this work is already underway. We will engage in a goal setting process in August when we meet as a board during our board retreat. And I think that we could use this document as well as the document we received from our Equity and Inclusion Advisory Group, also a group of students who presented to us in April. I think that we could really use these two documents to shape our board goals for the coming year. And so I appreciate particularly the timing of your presentation, because I think this is a great transition for us into the work that we need to continue and do next year. So with that, wondering if my board colleagues have questions and comments.
Chair Bouchard.
Yes, Director Adams.
I just have one question. Elliot, did you make any, did this group make any recommendations as far as head count for additional mental health professionals?
No specific head count for additional. I know that Hopkins Public Schools has one of the highest mental professionals to students basis. But I think we were talking more specifically about counselors who deal with trauma rather than just regular counselors. Because that was the big thing that we wanted to focus on.
So retraining the existing counselors?
Retraining, that would, I mean, if that's best practice for Hopkins schools rather than going out and finding. However, if there is a recommendation, or one of the recommendations is to have counselors that students can relate to, So part of that is finding new staff who can be seen by our student body and can be connected to.
As treasurer, I'm always concerned about the budgetary impact. So you
Correct.
didn't make any estimate as to number of professionals that additional professionals that might be required?
Not at this time, no.
All right, thank you.
I noticed that Principal Ballard had her hand up.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this information, Elliot. I just wanted to add, based on our budget for next school year, we are planning to hire someone with a background in mental health supports for scholars, and we're looking at a 1.0 FTE. And part of the reason as to why we're doing this work, of course, there's a need due to the pandemic and the increased mental health support of our scholars, but also from the recommendations from this document.
Chair Bouchard.
Vice Chair Andreessen.
Thanks. I just wanted to also express my gratitude for the work that was done around this. I was really impressed to see, or impressed by the fact that there are lots of overlaps between what the student advisory came up with and what your group also did. And so seeing the ways in which we can make these recommendations consistent across policy and implementation is really encouraging. So I appreciate all the work, and in particular the ways in which our administration and the school board has already started moving toward a lot of these recommendations, but also some really great places that we can focus our work on in the year to come. So thank you.
I heard somebody like really quietly. Was it you, John?
Yes, Chair Bouchard.
Yes, there you are, Director Cool.
I just have a quick question for Elliot. So, Elliot, as your group was discussing, what are your thoughts about the challenges between the elementary school versus the middle school versus the high school? Any thoughts that you could share on the discussions that you've had there, or is that yet to come? Thank you very much for your answer.
Yeah. When you're talking curriculum-wise, I trying to figure out. There is certain things that we can teach. There's never. I don't believe there's ever a young age to expose kids to what's happening in our world. There's definitely versions or amount that we can do exposures to elementary and middle school and junior high, and that is not something that we've talked about for sure, and definitely not something that we've met with elementaries yet to decide. But we can give a little snippet of what, and it doesn't have to be upfront, right? There's ways that children's books have messages and show the realistic things without being completely blatant about what's happening. And there's ways we can do miniature exposures to younger kids. And then as they grow older, be like, hey, remember this book, or remember this activity you did back in elementary school. This is what it was about. And this is the trueness of that now.
I noticed Ms. Magnance had raised a hand.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bouchard. I just wanted to add on to what Elliot, what he shared is moving forward, we are continuing work actually this summer around restorative justice and restorative practices. This is initiative that we're working with, the Achievement and Integration funding we've had this year to dedicate to the Royal Connections and Royal Reps student job employment opportunity. And we, so myself, Stephanie Herrera, and Alex Fisher are in the process of meeting with some of the students from this group, and then also some new students in that restorative practices work. So that there's more to come on that. But one of the goals we have is to actually have the students interview all of the principals and get a sense, kind of a pulse on where each of the schools are in terms of their restorative practices, because our goal is to build that, again, holistic restorative culture throughout all of our schools.
And that work certainly aligns with the work that our monitoring committee has been doing around what has historically been referred to as the discipline policy, but perhaps looking at a new name for that, and certainly new content within that policy to align with this restorative approach. And so I think a lot of opportunities for continued collaboration between the board and other members of our Hopkins team and our scholars who are working on this as we head into next year. Any last questions or comments from my board colleagues? Well, thank you so much. This was a really great way to kind of close out our workshops for the school year, given that it was at one of our first workshops this school year that we discussed the SRO contract and the creation of a more holistic safety model at the high school. And so, Elliot, I want to credit you with bringing this idea before the board to present it at this workshop this evening. And thank you for your leadership and certainly for the presentation, and to all of the students again who worked on this, and to George for your powerful words that you included in the document. And thank you to Principal Ballard and Ms. Magdance for being on the call with us this evening as well. Really appreciate it. So we will move into our public forum, which will begin right now at 5:29 p.m. And the topic of discussion is elementary and secondary school emergency relief, also referred to as ESSER funding. And I will turn it over to Dr. Mary Perry-Reed.
Thank you, Chair Bouchard. And again, greetings to school board members and community members who may be listening in this evening. We hope that there is community members in our midst, being that this is a public forum and we would love to have your input. So we recently learned that the Minnesota Department of Education is asking all school districts to hold a public forum before June 30 to provide our communities with additional information about federal COVID relief dollars, as well as ensure that there is a formalized process for community input. And so what we feel confident about is that there have, up until this point, been many opportunities for community input and for staff input around how we will mobilize ourselves toward Vision 2031. So, for example, we recently held 7 spring task forces, and the recommendations that came from those task forces are the types of things that we want to build within our organization, whether they're structures or systems, programs, processes, learning programs that will accelerate our scholars' ability to demonstrate those Vision 2031 characteristics. And we are focusing on identifying ways that these dollars will yield investments that build our capacity even after the dollars are gone. So one of the things that we're really trying to be very thoughtful about is sustainability. These are one-time dollars, and we have to think about how these funds can provide research-based boosts and enhancements to the good things that we are already doing in a way that we can sustain after the funding is gone. So that's really our challenge. And so we're going to get started this evening by first paying attention to some of the information about the various phases of the American Recovery Act dollars. And then we'll allow for a bit of ideation and brainstorming, hopefully, if we have community members on with us. And we understand that it was short notice, and we also had short notice from MDE. So definitely apologies for that. So I'm going to invite our Director of Business Services, Toriro Chapanduka, to take it from here. He has some information to share, and then we'll hopefully have some opportunity for community input and also for board and colleague input. Toriro?
Thank you, Dr. Mary Reid. Good evening, Chair Bouchard. Good evening, respective board members. I hope you guys can hear me. Sometimes my computer acts up when it comes to these times of presentations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present my screen here. Some of the information has already been shared in the past. The last time being April 28th when we did the presentation. We also have a web page on our business services platform, which is kind of dedicated to some of the uses of the ESSA dollars and how we've used it in the past. So my plan is to take you through the process, and then we'll end up landing to where we are with some of the awards we've received, which haven't been allocated. And my understanding too is MD is also doing this forum so that they can get a better understanding of what the priorities are from a community standpoint, and then they will pull all this information together and give school districts and our non-pubs some more guidance on how the dollars will be used with our ESSA 3 allocations. So
Director Chapanduka, I'm sorry to interrupt. Thank you for your introduction. We do have 5 viewers, and so there's one thing that I forgot to mention. So while you're speaking, community members, if you go to the Hopkins Public Schools website, so hopkinsschools.org, and then you go to the district webpage and select school board and scroll down, then you will find a link where you can submit questions or comments. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows about this link because we are live streaming this via YouTube, so there's not an opportunity for you to voice in your question in real time. So that is the process for getting to that link. And Toriro, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Thank you.
No problem. No, thank you for bringing that up. I'll go ahead and actually present my screen here. Please let me know once you see my screen, since I won't be able to see you. Just give me a second here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what I have here is actually a chart, more of like a hierarchical org chart, which shows our different, and I know you probably won't see it very well because the information is cluttered, so I'll give some further explanation on my next slides. But again, this is just a a chart which kind of shows all the different federal COVID funding which we have received as a system, starting with our Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act, which was the CARES Act, which funded our initial ESSA 90%. And I'll get into the details as we go through the slides on how much we received for that and what we used those dollars for. Our ESSA 9.5%, our Gear 1, as well as our Coronavirus Relief Fund, which was supposed to support our student and family activities. And then, and this actually was signed into law in March of 2020, and the dollars are eligible to be expended by September 30th of 2022. But we have to incur the expenditures by June 30th, but we have a gap period for us to claim reimbursements from the government until September 30th of 2022. Apart from the coronavirus relief funds, those funds actually were available through December 31st of 2020. The second allocation we received was the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplementary Appropriations Act, CRRSA, which funded our ESSA 290%, our ESSA 9.5%, our Gear 2, for non-PABs. And again, I just want to make it clear that some of these dollars don't pertain to learning areas. For example, our school districts, some of them are allocated to non-PABs and intermediate districts. And then the allocations for CRSA were signed into law in December 27th of 2020, and eligible for use until September 30th of 2023. The next batch is the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARP, and this allocation is the allocation which actually we just received recently, and this is actually divided into about 6 different parts. The first being the state fiscal recovery, the non-PABs, the homeless, the ESSA 9.5%, the ESSA 90%, and the IDEA. At this point in time, what we've received is an award allocation under the ESSA 90%, and we haven't received anything beyond that. And these dollars are actually available through, they were signed into law in March of 2021, and they are available for usage through September 30th of 2024. Again, the next slide just shows a breakdown of the components I've been talking about in my previous slides, with the CARES funds, the CRRSA, as well as the American Rescue Plan Act. With the American Rescue Plan Act, which is what we are going to spend more time on, actually covers the state fiscal recovery, which is the governor's summer supports, increase to adult basic education, preschool for 5-year-olds. So these are all allocations. Some of them don't pertain to us, but these are the allocations based on the governor's priorities. They also cover up expenditures for non-PABs. They also cover up expenditures for homeless, and as well as the ESSA 90%, which is divided into 2 components, which is the learning loss. So we are supposed to spend 20% of those dollars on learning loss and 80% on other flexible needs based on the district's priorities. And then we have the ESSA 3, which have not really been allocated, which is the 9.5%, whose usage basically is determined by the state. 2.5% of that is supposed to be covering other state activities, as well as another 5%. I will have to actually kind of check on that and see the remaining, but we haven't been told how those dollars will be allocated to districts, or whether we'll be receiving any of those any of those funding allocations. But at this point in time, what I can confidently say is we have the ESSA 3 allocation to the district, which is the $6 million awarded to us. And again, this information has been shared in the past and is also on our webpage, starting with how we used our ESSA dollars. So the initial ESSA 1 funds were used for different activities. Some of those have already been accomplished. We've already started the process of claiming a reinvestment for some of those dollars, including activities which were related to resources availed to school leaders to address any school needs. Some of the activities which were addressing unique needs of low-income children, students, children with disabilities, English learners, racial and ethnic minorities, student experiencing homelessness, and so forth. As well as training and professional development of staff on sanitization. We did use a lot of those ESSA 1 and CRF funds for making sure that our buildings were clean, our ventilation systems were up to standard with ionizations and other additional components we did put additional resources on in the buildings. We also used those dollars for purchasing supplies to sanitize and clean our school and building facilities. We also used a substantial amount of those resources for purchasing educational technology, providing hotspots, providing mental health and, services and support for our scholars. So there's a lot of work which was done through the Corona Relief Funds as well as the ESSA 1, 90% ESSA 1, 9.5% and the GEAR 1, which is also supporting our summer programs. Now we can jump to the ESSA 2. So the ESSA 2, the government allowed us to continue in the footpath with using with the ESSA 1, but they also added some additional usages. And those additional usages involved, addressing learning loss among students, as well as covering up for any facility repair and improvements, which had components related to indoor air quality within our schools, or any other mechanical and non-mechanical heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, filtering, and so forth. So those were the additional components which we could use the ESSA 1 and ESSA 2 resources. Now I'll jump into some of the allocations and what we used them for before I come back again to make some discussions around the ESSA 3. So the first award, which was the Coronavirus Relief Funds, which was $1,966,929. And we used this for different needs within the district, from salaries to addressing social emotional learning to buying PPEs, buying devices, distance learning accessories, the ventilation, portable sinks, and so forth. So those dollars, we were able to use the total $1.9 million, and were able to claim a reimbursement from the state. The next batch was the ESSA 1, 90%, which actually we had until June 30th of this year to be able to claim a reimbursement. That was $725,000, 817. And again, we used those just to expand on what we had left on with the coronavirus relief funds, with salaries and benefits, addressing social emotional learning, PPEs, ventilations, as well as scholarships. So those funds actually we have claimed those funds based on those plans and priorities. And the next was the 9.5% ESA 1, which was the 143,252. Again, its uses were also an extension of what we'd left within the ESA 190% and the CRF, addressing some of the family license, nurses, salaries and benefits, additional PPEs, summer school programming, other, contracted services with social emotional learning. And then the next allocation was the Gear 1, which was 136,295. And these dollars are actually being used now, addressing some of the summer teachers and social workers, some of the supplies and needs during the summer programs and summer planning. So those dollars, 136,295, have been used and earmarked for those activities. And then the next allocation is the ESA 2, the $2.6 million, $2,644,359. And these dollars have been used to actually cover up some of the gaps within our fiscal year 21-22 with some of the positions which have been added into our system, just to address some of the budget challenges, as well as some of the dollars we have been earmarked for other needs within our learning spaces, as well as capital outlay projects. One considering our blended flex spaces, our ventilation systems, and any other needs which may not fall within our current regular budgets. We also have received other awards outside of the ESA and the GEAR funds, this being the Governor's Discretionary American Rescue Plan Fund. The district got awarded $273,096, which we are using as part of our summer programs, as well as the extended summer learning programs. $156,400 has been awarded to the district. So we have $429,000, 496, but these dollars are mostly strictly related to summer programming and summer activities. But these are other resources the districts have received to mitigate and also prioritize on summer projects.
Director Chapaduka, would you be open to board members asking questions as they have them as we move through the presentation?
Sure.
All right, Director Adams has his hand up.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Bouchard. Terrell, I noticed early on, I think it was for the ARP funds, that some of that is for non-public schools. Have we dispersed any of those funds yet?
So what we've done is we have not out of the ARP funds. So the ones we've dispersed were actually coming out of the ESA 1 funds.
Okay.
We haven't gotten anything or any instruction as far as what those allocations are for the non-pubs through the ESA 3. I know there was some disconnection from how the state initially wanted the formula to look like for any allocations to non-pubs, and then we did get some clarification for the ESA 1, but we haven't gotten any clarification as far as the ESA 3 or any of the other remaining ARP funds.
Okay, so we haven't dispersed any of that money yet?
Correct.
Okay. Another question on scholarships. What were those scholarships for?
So the scholarships were actually tied to some of the community education activities with Kids and Co. Okay. For example, when we initially had the pandemic and then we're required to provide services to essential workers, with daycare. So those were some of the dollars we actually mitigated to help community education cover for those expenditures.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Can I continue?
Please do. Thank you, Director Chapanduka.
Okay, thank you. So the other component, which is our ESA 3, so this is the new allocation which we just received, $6,033,842. And this is part of the reason why the state is wanting us to actually do these forums because they need some more guidance on how these resources will be expended. So the 6 million is the 90%, which based on the information we have at this point in time, we are supposed to use 20% of that to address learning loss, and then 80% is flexible. So as I've been doing some research, I was able to pull some information from a draft standpoint with some of the things the state is putting on the table. But these are not finalized. They're still getting more input from school district. So some of the strategies which are on the table from an MDE perspective include things like expanding full-service community schools that provide wraparound services to students and their families, expanding access to tutoring, implement a multi-tiered teaching framework to provide high-quality instruction that is responsive to the needs of all learners, increase student support personnel, counselors, social workers, school psychologists, school nurses, and chemical or aid life skills programming for students receiving special education services, teacher recruitment and retention, including teachers of color and indigenous teachers, expand language across for families who do not speak English as their first language, things like translation services, cultural liaisons, and culturally specific public engagement, expand rigorous coursework such as advanced placement, IB, career and technical education, or concurrent enrollment courses to foster opportunities for underserved and underrepresented students, both demographically and geographically. Develop, implement, and maintain an ethnic and indigenous education studies curriculum process. Field trips and hands-on learning, as well as expanding after-school activities. So these are some of the broad-based strategies at the table, which will probably be explored and will get more guidance. But at the same time, we've also been thinking from a district-wide perspective how we'll need to strategize these resources as a system so that they work for the district in the long haul. With that, I will hand over to Dr. Miripe Reid to actually take us further on what we've been discussing.
Thank you so much, Director Chapanduka. I really appreciate the efforts that you've put into broadening our understanding and providing a context within which everyone can better operate. I'm just going to take a quick look at the Hopkins School Board candidate information session, and it's supposed to say "and" ESSER Public Forum. I think it's a very long title that doesn't fit there. And we don't have any responses or questions from the community. However, with some additional framing, hopefully if there are any viewers, they will submit some feedback or questions, and we can, of course, provide other opportunities for community input. And as we were planning for this session at the cabinet level, we realized that we have offered multiple opportunities for engagement, and we already have some fabulous ideas on the table. And in addition to reviewing those ideas, we also think it's important for each school to facilitate community-based input sessions so that parents and staff within each school community can look at the their own particular context and the needs of the students that they serve, and look at the recommendations that came from our spring task forces as well as Vision 2031 to answer the question, well, how would we best utilize these dollars so that we can accelerate student learning and move toward Vision 2031 in a way that really supports any of our students who need an extra boost or programs that need extra support. Some additional parameters that we thought through. The first bullet you'll see there is strengthening foundational systems that will last after the resources are gone. So we've mentioned a couple of times now that what will be really challenging is to hire a ton of personnel with these dollars that we won't be able to retain after the dollars are gone. And so we really have to think carefully about who we hire if we do fund people with these dollars, and how, are these consultants that serve for just a short period of time to build our skill and to build our capacity, or are these individuals who somehow will come to expect a longer term contract or position? And so that gets really tricky. So we want to be really thoughtful and strategic about the foundational systems that will last after the resources are gone. The second bullet is around increasing knowledge and skills capital. And so if we ask ourselves, what do all of the adults in our system need to know or be able to do in order to teach every student at the highest level, in order to provide personalized, culturally relevant curriculum to every scholar? If we identify all these things that staff need to know and be able to do, then that can inform a set or a scope and sequence of trainings, of professional learning opportunities that will build our capacity to be able to do better and different work. And that kind of investment will last beyond the time when the dollars disappear. The third bullet is around investing in Vision 2031 priorities. So really taking a look at our Vision 2031 roadmap, taking a look at the recommendations that came from really the almost 300 now people who have served on our 2018 and our 2021 task forces, and identifying those unfunded priorities, or those priorities that need some kind of investment boost in order to either be launched or continue making the impact that we're seeking. And then the fourth bullet is around implementing the task force recommendations, which I've already spoken to. So these were some of the parameters that we wanted to provide any listeners who may be with us this evening to help you with your thinking, rather than just sort of asking, well, what should we spend the money on, right? No, let's be thoughtful, let's be strategic, let's be aligned with Vision 2031, and let's think about those structures, those programs, those systems that really build our capacity and will last beyond the next 2 years, which is the timeline for spending these dollars. So at this time, I'm going to check the form again, and we do not have questions coming in, but that doesn't preclude us from perhaps creating the space for anyone in the Google Meet right now to ask a question or offer an idea before we close out this experience. Are there any? Go ahead.
I was going to say thank you very much, Superintendent Mary Peary-Reed and Director Chapanduka. Just for additional context for our community, this is not the first time we've talked about ESSER funding at this table. In fact, it has been a theme that we've discussed at multiple workshops, multiple meetings, embedded in our budgeting discussions. And it was exciting and helpful, at least for me tonight, to get an idea of some of these parameters for thinking to the future of how we're going to use this rather substantial allocation that is coming to us over the next 2 years. And just wanted to echo that if you have thoughts after this hearing and you'd like to reach out to the board with those thoughts, you can certainly email us. You can email individual board members or use the contact the board form on the website. And then Dr. Mary Perry Reed mentioned the possibility of school community-based listening sessions and ideation sessions around the use of ESSER funds. Dr. Mary Perry Reed, how will those be communicated out when they're scheduled?
Chair Bouchard, thank you for the question. Are you talking about the school-based opportunities?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think we'll follow the communication patterns that our communities are used to. Typically, we try to send a district-wide message that's reinforced by principals in their Friday or weekend newsletters. Those are the best ways we feel of reaching most of our parents. We also want to leverage our language liaisons to make sure that those messages are translated into our top 3 languages, which are Spanish, Hmong, and Somali, to make sure that our parents and caregivers and community members in those language groups also have a chance at knowing about these opportunities.
Thank you very much. Being mindful of our time here and that we need to transition into our candidate engagement session, wondering if my board colleagues have any final questions or comments for Director Chapanduka. Okay, so we'll end this public hearing at 6:02 p.m. and now transition into our candidate information session. Team who is leading that, would you like a 5-minute transition period or are you ready to roll?
I don't want to speak for everyone. I'm happy to do either. Shannon, Rhoda, or Steve, do you need a break or should we? Okay. Well, let's not necessarily take a hard break, but I know that some of, like Jen, you're leaving. And actually, we were talking about perhaps not sitting at the board table for this. Just it feels really impersonal. Steve and I were talking about that earlier, that we would like to maybe set a table up there, and I'm not sure how to work with cameras, but we'll still have the presentation.
Cameras are on our screen here.
But it just feels really impersonal to me to be at the table when we have people sitting in the room that were. Yeah.
Could we invite them to the table?
Ooh,
We could.
that's
Since
a
there's
good
so
idea.
few, because then we can still hold the hybrid
Yeah, I like
form,
that.
right?
And then it doesn't feel like they're. Are you guys comfortable? We have plenty of seats. That way we can still do the hybrid, but we don't. You guys are joining us. You'll get to know what it really feels like. All right, I'll get my.
Ooh.
No. My confused face or my screen? Are you seeing, like, it doesn't have to present. Oh, here we go. Oh, yeah, hey. Yes, Shannon's going to be here too. Oh, I probably have to take myself off.
Good idea.
It's so much easier when we don't have to do this. Google Meets.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Hi. You couldn't hear me before, Steve? All right.
Before we start, could we ask the people to, well, let's just go around the table and have everyone identify themselves.
I would love that. Do you want to start?
Sure. Steve Adams. I'm the director of the school board plus school board treasurer. And I've been on the board for, I'm going to be starting my 10th year. So.
All right. I'm Katie Peterson. I am school board director, also the school board clerk, which is the very prestigious role that gets to do roll call and sign a lot of papers. It's coveted. And I live in Golden Valley, have 2 kiddos at Meadowbrook Elementary. And this is the start of my 2nd year on the school board. Yeah, I remember our time together earlier this year when you put your name forward for the open position we had. It's good to see you again. Yeah. Awesome. Welcome. Awesome. Awesome.
Hi, and I'm Shannon Andreessen, a parent and vice chair of the school board. And I came in with Katie Peterson and Steve. So we are in our, 2nd year of service on the board.
Hi there. I don't know whether to look at you or the camera, but I'm Rhoda Mary Puri Reed, superintendent. I'm ending my 4th year, and I love working with my school board, and we're looking forward to finding out which wonderful people are going to join the board. Thank you.
Okay. You want to go for it?
Okay, so welcome to our 3 interested community members and parents who are with us today in person, and also to anyone who might be viewing from home or other remote spaces. I want to share some information with you about the Hopkins School District. And then at any point in time, if you have a question, feel free to ask that question in real time. We can keep this as casual and informal as possible. I'm also echoing. Does anybody know why that might be?
Oh, because I'm not muted because I can't get out. Because of me, Rhoda.
No problem. Okay, thank you. So some information about who we are in Hopkins. We are still echoing. Oh, is it too disconcerting or is it manageable? I wonder if Steve. Testing, testing. Okay, sorry. All right, so in Hopkins, we are a district, a system of 10 schools and a couple of important satellite programs. So we have an early learning center, Harley Hopkins. We have 6 elementary schools that are preschool through grade 6. We have 2 junior highs, 7, 8, and 9, and we have a single high school. We also have Transition Plus, which is a program that we do in partnership with Minnetonka and St. Louis Park, and that is our program that serves our 18 through 21-year-old students who have individualized education plans and need support as they transition from the K-12 experience to independence as adults. We also have a program called, well, it's at the Pavilion, and sometimes we call it the Pavilion. That's not really the program name, but it's a program that serves a small number of middle schoolers who need a small school feel, and that's over at the Hopkins Ice Arena, the Pavilion. We are very proud of what we do in Hopkins. We're a very diverse school district. Approximately 50% of our students are white. About 50% of our students are non-white. We have 71 languages represented, with our top 3 language groups being Spanish, Somali, and Hmong. About 13% of our students qualify for special education services. And, in lots of ways, we represent the world. We're a microcosm of the world with, a variety of religions and languages, and even, socioeconomically, about 40% of our students district-wide qualify for free and reduced lunch, with that percentage varying at each of our different schools. We're really proud to graduate 500 and I've seen the numbers of 520 and 530. So I think, the reality is that on graduation day, you always have a handful of scholars, maybe 5 or 10 scholars who, might be a half of a credit, of 1 credit, or 1.5 credits away from graduation. And so whether or not those kids will be counted in the number is sometimes what impacts, our inability to give a super precise number. But approximately 530 seniors who graduated as part of class of 21. And we had those 2 ceremonies at Mariucci, and they went really well. Let's see. Other data, I did forget to mention that about 8% of our students in Hopkins are English language learners. So their heritage language is something other than English, and we provide English language learning services to those students. And that's a little bit about our sort of who we are and our demographics. We are a district that serves all of Hopkins, 2/3 of Minnetonka, half of Golden Valley, and then very small portions of Edina, Eden Prairie, Plymouth, and St. Louis Park. And we're about 29 geographic square miles. Okay, so one of the things that we're proud of in Hopkins, and that also informs the work that we do programmatically, is Vision 2031. And so we launched this vision in the fall of 2018 after a series of community engagement sessions, staff engagement sessions. We partnered with a firm called Go-Kart Labs that helps organizations reimagine themselves. We empowered a group of about 30 junior high and high school students to engage in market research. Essentially, we provided them with training, and we armed them with iPads and with like t-shirts that they designed themselves, and they put together a whole summer schedule of activities and went out and interviewed more than 300 parents and community members, asking questions about, how have you experienced Hopkins Public Schools? What's your current perception? What do you think Hopkins needs to do to go from where we are, so to move from like great to world class? Like, what does a world class education look like to you? And that was a really great way of collecting a lot of very rich information from our external stakeholders. We did a very similar thing within the system. We had a lot of staff engagement sessions. We had a full day 2-day experience with Go-Kart Labs, where we had 60 individuals, mostly staff members, all of the leaders, a couple of school board members, a couple of parents, a couple of students, and we just did visioning for 2 days. And so the result of all of this months of work was Vision 2031, which we firmly believe was informed by members of our community, internal and external community. And, a vision is something that is achievable, but is so audacious that you have to work hard to get there, right? And so we love the fact that our vision is very bold, and it's going to take a lot of work to get there, because we imagine a system where every student is successful and where we do interrupt the performance gaps that are predictable along the lines of race and parent income that you will see all across this country. And so there are some things that we're doing really well in Hopkins, and there are some things that we need to do differently so that all of our learners can be successful. And this is sort of the spirit of Vision 2031. So within our vision, and you'll see on the roadmap, we have identified our core values. We have identified our innovation drivers. We have identified the pillars of the work. So what are the big chunks of work that we need to do in order to reach Vision 2031, such as building holistic curriculum so that students can learn across in transdisciplinary ways, creating students of the world, evolving the educator role so that teachers' skill sets evolve along with sort of how society around us is evolving, and in accordance with the skills that are needed for young people to navigate the future. So, for example, one of the organizations that we pay attention to is the World Economic Forum, because on a regular basis, they research all of the Fortune 500s and all of these companies and colleges to say, well, what skills are needed for the year 2025 or the year 2030? And then we use those to really guide the curriculum and planning that we have to do, knowing that the world that we operate within now is going to be really different from the world that our young people will enter into when they graduate. So we want to be future forward. We don't want to just continue doing things the way that we've always done them, knowing that the results are not good enough. They have been good for many of our students, and they can be better for those same students, and we are wanting to create the systems and the learning processes that help every student reach their brilliant future. And then you see in the middle of the slide there the traits of the Hopkins graduate. So in researching with colleges, with our stakeholders, with employers, we identified that we need to build scholars who are empathetic, who are confident and have their own voice, who have a global perspective, know how to navigate the world, who know how to think critically, they're academically competent, and holistic thinkers. So that means that they can easily draw connections across lots of different spaces, because we know that the future thinker and leader is very fluid, cognitively fluid in their thinking. So those are a few aspects of our vision, and feel free to keep the roadmap as a treat from today. A what? A campaign tool, or just an artifact from today. And do I have the next slide, or is that someone else then? Okay, what's that one? Oh, here we go. Okay, so like any organization, we have some attributes and components in our system that we're really proud of, that serve as great highlights of who we are and what we do, such as a diverse student body, a very supportive community, a community who bleeds as blue as is it Stacy's shirt, right? Like our Hopkins community bleeds blue, right? We do have a student focused curriculum, and we want to do more to make sure that it's not just student focused, but culturally relevant for all of our scholars, and to make sure that it doesn't reflect a pedagogy of the past, which is sort of, teachers telling and students doing, which has really served a wonderful purpose in our society. But now our students are asking for more active engagement, where students have a voice in sort of saying what they want to learn about, and our teachers are not necessarily like information providers, but they are facilitators or activators of learning, and they coach learning rather than sort of telling students what to do or what to know. So I love this idea that in Hopkins, we don't teach students what to think, we teach students how to think. And what is a teacher's skill set and role in teaching students how to think? So high expectations for all students is something that we have that I also think we can grow. We do pride ourselves. Even before I arrived in Hopkins, I learned from a lot of members in our community that Hopkins has always been innovative and has always been recognized by other districts as being a place where innovation occurs. We do have a staff that is very focused on equity. We talk a lot about anti-racism, which doesn't have to be a trigger word or a trigger concept. What it is actively not being racist. And we don't believe that we have individuals who are extreme racists in our organization. What we believe is that our system has perpetuated some inequities that detrimentally impact some of our scholars, and that we have to be aware of what those are, and we have to make some changes in either our instructional practices or our organizational behaviors or our programs to ensure that no student or no student group is perpetually disenfranchised or perpetually discriminated against. And so we do, think about, well, what does it mean to be not just student-centered, but every student-centered? And then with the help of this board, we have very sound fiscal management in our district and a history of that. We also, Tariro Chapanduka, who maybe you heard earlier with the ESSER presentation, he's extremely knowledgeable as a chief financial officer, and he's really helped us be super on point with our district's budget. Some of the challenges, revenue uncertainty is there, and it really is something that affects all school districts as we think about school funding streams and how the legislature supports public schools. There's always that uncertainty of whether or not we're going to get the kind of funding support that corresponds with the increases in the cost of living and the cost of doing this work. We have a lot of competition with schools. Parents have so much choice. You can choose, there's open enrollment across the whole state. So, and we serve 2/3 of Minnetonka. Well, we might have families in Minnetonka who, for them, it just makes more sense to attend Minnetonka public schools. I live in the city of Minnetonka. I should attend Minnetonka public schools. Or maybe there's something with, the comfort level that folks have, whether or not they want to be part of a very, very diverse, racially, ethnically, socioeconomically diverse environment, or if they feel more comfortable in a more racially homogenous setting, or a more homogenous setting in terms of parent income. So there's a lot of competition with our all of the districts that we butt up against. And then there are, I don't know how many I can find out for you, but there are a ton of charter schools in our attendance area. I think it was 8 or 9 charter schools in our attendance area, and then a ton of private schools in our attendance area. So families have, and I believe in choice. I think, have at it. You know what your child needs, and you can choose public. And if you choose public, you can choose any public, right? Because of open enrollment. You can choose private. You can choose charter. I mean, it's wow. But the challenge for a district is great because our revenue is based on enrollment. So if we don't get the kids, we don't get the funding. And if we don't get the funding, we can't retain teachers. We can't retain our staff. So it's all connected. So we are always thinking about enrollment. And it's not just enrollment to get kids. We don't want to just get kids. When we get kids and families, we want to provide a quality service. And word of mouth is so strong. We've had a lot of challenges this year with just, people feeling positive, I think, about education in general. We had COVID, and then there's budget reductions that most districts were going through because lots of districts had enrollment losses. And, I think parents, it's you want the best for your child. And so just really working on our public image and listening to all parents, knowing that we can't make everyone happy, but we have to work as though we can. Honestly, that is the challenge. You have to work so hard to try to make everyone happy, but the reality is that it's probably not possible, but it shouldn't prevent you from really working your butt off, which is something that I feel like we really do around here. Talking way too much. And then the opportunity gaps, I already talked about that. Opportunity gaps, the reason that is the phrase we use, we're trying to move away from this thing called achievement gap. Because the belief that we have is when you talk about an achievement gap, then there's almost this sort of maybe this idea that the failure to achieve rests on the student or the family. And that is a really deficit, based place to be. So we think about the gap is in the system. It's a system gap. School districts, schools have failed to make sure that everyone has access, equal and equitable access to the opportunities that will deliver them to the brilliant future that they deserve. So that's it's an intentional use of language to talk about opportunity gaps rather than achievement gaps. If we close the opportunity gap, then all students will achieve. is sort of the idea. So that's my piece, and maybe we could pause for a minute to see if you have questions. And I think, I don't know if Elise is like putting questions in the chat, or I don't think I understand how that's working. Okay. So far, there's nothing in there. It's just one Hopkins parent. Okay, yeah. Okay. That's a good question.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it on mute, but
Oh, do you want to repeat the question? Because
Yeah, the question was, given the structure of the school board and the superintendent, how much power does the school board have to change something?
Well, this screen right here kind of lays out what the roles and responsibilities are for a school board member. Those are the kinds of things that the board has no control over. So these are the three main areas that we deal with: policy and governance. And Shannon chairs our policy monitoring committee. So they review school policies on a very regular basis, some policies every year. We also have fiscal responsibility. So we're responsible for setting the budget every year. And that's a process that starts actually in September, August or September. And what happened?
yeah, I'm trying to mute. You're taking my slides and I was unmuted.
Were those your slides? I'm sorry.
Okay, hang on. Let me go back to sharing. I'll stay on mute because it's, yeah, when I'm sharing, I can't mute because I can't view the meet. So hang on, let me go to the slides and share again. Oh, please. It's very convoluted. I should have two computers open. That's actually what I should do. Now I'm going. You keep going, Steve, once I share my. Okay.
All right. And we have, the board has one employee that they supervise, and that's the superintendent. So, we don't get involved in personnel issues. We don't appoint, principals or fire teachers or hire teachers. That's all done by the cabinet, Rhoda's cabinet. So those are things we don't get involved in. Going back to fiscal responsibility, we do set budgets and we do determine what the property taxes are going to be every year. And that's required by law. We have to have a public hearing in December to determine what those are going to be. And then we approve and review our goals every year. We do have some goals for the board. I won't bore you with those right now, but we do have goals that we set on an annual basis of things we'd like to achieve during the school year. So I'm sorry if I stepped on your...
No, I just was unmuted because of that, and then, but it's fine, and I get in with my school board email. Do you want to take this too?
Sure.
Could I just, to follow up on the direct question of the power of the school board, I think one of the most important things I learned as I was doing training to be on the school board is that the power of the school board is collective. It is a body that governs. And so your role as an individual does not come with any individual power. It is all through the collective group of the school board. So I hope that helps.
Do you want me to tackle that? So yeah, like Clerk Peterson was saying, it depends on the problem. So if it's a problem around a lesson plan or homework assignment, it would be solved between the parent and the teacher. If it's a challenge or a problem with like a whole curriculum, or something that is probably impacting other students beyond your child, then you and the principal would work together on that, because every school has a set of classroom teachers, and every school also has a principal that provides supervision and leadership for teachers. If it's a problem that supersedes, like goes beyond a single school, like you're like, wow, this is a big thing, and I think it's affecting like 3 or 4 elementary schools, then we have individuals who report to me who manage like big departments or lots of schools. So we have a director of principal leadership that could work with a parent who maybe has a concern with, that sort of is pervasive across schools. Or we have a director of teaching and learning. We have a director of technology. We have director of special ed. So it really depends on what the problem is and the scope of the problem, like how broad or wide or large it is. And then if it's within a classroom, within a school, or across parts or the whole system. And so what we try to, really be respectfully work with people on is really like thinking about who is the best person to help solve the problem. Now, it's fine for parents to email the entire school board about a problem they're having. And I think it's good for the school board members to know of, the experiences that parents and or staff might be having, positive or not so positive. And beyond knowing the problem, if the problem is to be solved, then I have to figure out, well, who is the best person to solve this problem? And I mean, there are, as great as of a job that we are doing, there are a lot of problems, right? You can imagine 7,000 students and 700 teachers. There's always a problem every day, even though there's more successes than there are challenges. And so we try to have a system for solving the problems that come forward. It would be too much for board members to manage in any way that it goes beyond their responsibilities, because they're focused on finance and policy, which I think they're about to explain. Does that help? Okay. And if the problem is still unresolved, I would love to personally check in with you and figure out how we can tackle it.
Did you see me just problem solve that?
Yes.
In which case, Elise is the one that helped that. So she's presenting now, so I can actually unmute and speak like a normal human being. On this slide, it's obviously all the reasons that you should run, but what I thought would really be more interesting is for Shannon and Steve and I to share a little bit about why we ran, just really quickly. And so, and I'll start since I'm already unmuted. For me personally, I had a pretty homogenous upbringing. I grew up, went to the Minnetonka School District, graduated from there, went to St. Olaf. It was about as white bread as an upbringing could really become. And I didn't really want that for my kiddos because once I graduated college, I saw that wasn't real life. And once I was in the real world, it was not the time to learn lessons. And I just wanted my kids to have the opportunity to, much like Dr. Mary Perry Reed said, Hopkins represents, the world, or a microcosm of it. And I wanted my kids to grow up and go to school in a district like that, where they understood that people are all colors and shapes and they think differently and they come from different socioeconomic backgrounds. So I was really excited to put my kids in Hopkins to begin with. But then once Vision 2031 came around, I just really wanted to be a part of building up the public image, like you mentioned, just the way that people view us, our image. I wanted to be a part of rebuilding that image to what it was like maybe when I was in school. I don't know why this kind of image decline happened, but it did, and we lost a lot of students. And I wanted to be a part of rebuilding and a part of Vision 2031. So that's kind of why I ran.
Well, I ran because I was involved a lot in the Legislative Action Coalition in the district, which Steve is a co-chair of. And so I learned a lot about the challenges facing school districts in the current legislative climate that we have. And I was tapped in and engaged and learned a lot about kind of how the school board works and how that intersects with laws and funding and all that kind of stuff. And through that process, I was asked by a current school board member to run, and I said no, because that's just not something I would ever do to myself. To run a campaign, and to hold yourself up to be liked by people voting for you. So, but as I went through the Vision 2031 task force experience as a community member and a parent, that really solidified my seeing a much bigger, broader picture of what the district is, how it serves students, and also what it could be. And I really wanted to be a part of that, and looking at the makeup of the school board at that point, there weren't very many parents on the board, and I felt like that was a voice that really needed to be well represented as we were going through Vision 2031 and the pieces of that were really starting to take off at the time. And I also did it because I'm a really big advocate for my two kids. They are, as all students are, unique learners, and they access services across the educational landscape. I have a student with special needs, but also accesses accelerated learning as well. And I really wanted to ensure that the voices and that student population is well represented at the school board level as well.
And I had two children that went through the entire Hopkins experience, from kindergarten all the way through sixth grade at Tanglin. and then their years at North, and then graduated from the high school. And my wife taught in the district for more than 40 years in various capacities. So I was pretty familiar with the district. But prior to this being elected to the board, I served on the Minnetonka Planning Commission for 6 years. And one of the things that I knew was going to be coming to our district was the light rail. And I was concerned about the impact that it might have on the district. We've got as many light rail stops in our district for the Southwest Light Rail as the Minneapolis School District does. So that tells you the kind of impact it could have. And I knew that there's going to be additional development. There could possibly be some additional students coming into the district. And I thought that someone with that kind of background needed to be on the board to kind of see to alert everyone to what the future might hold. As it turns out, it's not going to be as big of impact as we thought it was, but at least we thought about it, and we'll see how things evolve. But that was my main reason for joining the school board.
Katie?
Yeah.
There are a couple things in the chat. So one was a request to repeat the questions that we're answering. I think the only question has been around how problems are solved. And the example that was brought up, I think, was either at the school or classroom level, but we talked about how problems are solved at the school classroom or system level. So I hope we answered that appropriately. And then the second question is, that's for any of you board members, as states and municipalities across the country are moving forward with legislation dictating curriculum, where does the school board fit into that?
That feels like a Shannon or a Steve.
Well, we don't really determine curriculum either. That's something that Rhoda and her staff determine. I mean, we can always raise questions about it, ask for explanations, but we don't determine curriculum. So that's a short.
We can provide through policy guidance around it, but yes, as far as I want you to do this curriculum or that curriculum, I don't think that that's something that the board does, nor do I think anyone in the community would want us making those decisions. I mean, I have a master's degree, but it is not in education. So.
And I think the only thing I would add is it's not just like, oh, the superintendent and the director of teaching and learning think that this curriculum would be fantastic. We actually have state standards that we have to pay attention to. And so there is a whole department at the state level that helps districts engage in curriculum review and make sure that the curriculum being taught is actually aligned to standards. So it's not completely just up to whoever's currently running the district.
The board does get periodic curriculum updates. So I think once every 2 years, it's on a staggered basis. We'll hear what's the new math curriculum, what's the new social studies, what's the new reading, whatever. But we don't, it's for our information only. It's a non-voting topic.
Perfect. Elise, can you go to the next slide? The next slide is really kind of back to Sarah, as you asked about kind of the roles and responsibilities of the board. One of the things that I've really found, though, as I look at this, these responsibilities, it seems like we are really high level, which we are. But a lot of what we do also has to do with driving the direction of the conversation and asking the right questions of the people who do make those decisions, right? So when I think about that question and then I look at this slide, it seems like, frankly, the amount of control we have tends to be pretty high level or minimal. But a big part of it is, for me personally, we have like a rock star superintendent, and I trust her to put the right people in place. But then we also require of her that she bring the right people to the table as we have questions about stuff. So we'll get like a board packet, and if there's something on there that we have questions about in advance, we'll kind of let Rhoda know. And then Rhoda will ensure that the right people from her cabinet or her staff are there to provide us with the answers on that stuff to approve something at a really high level. So we do look at the details of things and dig into things that we might not be approving a specific decision, but we have the opportunity to ask the questions of the people who are driving those decisions forward, right? So I guess I wanted to be clear on that a little bit, but it also really comes down to, again, like Tariro Chapanduka is an amazing fiscal manager. You know, Rhoda is an amazing forward thinker and visionary leader. And so we're the people that make sure that those people are in place and that we support them in their work, right? So, I won't go through this because I feel like we kind of already did this, but really it is policy, dollars and cents, and then really the toughest part. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right, can you go to the next slide for me, Elise? So a lot of people are wondering the time commitment, and I think there's two types of time commitment really when you're talking about being a school board member, the things that you really need to be present for physically, and then the types of things that you need to put into it on your own time, right? So from the things that you need to do physically, we have 1 to 2 board meetings a month. They're always on Tuesday nights, and at least over the past 2 years, I think because of COVID and budget cuts and everything, we've had a workshop before every meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but it used to be every other meeting we had a workshop. But now, lately, I mean, so I think just because of everything that's going on, we've been having workshops before every meeting. So our meetings are very, you know, we're approving stuff. Sorry, I'll just wear this, but then I hear myself talk. We're approving stuff. But it's the workshops beforehand where we're having really casual conversations and asking those questions and getting presentations. So we don't need to follow the I second that, the rules of an actual board meeting during those workshops. So that's kind of more where the magic happens. And so I usually plan that I will be here every other Tuesday from 5 to 10 from a time commitment. Community engagements and events. I mean, there's a lot of that's kind of the fun stuff, right? Graduation, retirement ceremonies, community engagement sessions, listening sessions, the committee meetings. This is kind of an important one too. Each of us sit on anywhere between, I would say, 2 and 5 committees that serve the board. And those committees are everything from the Legislative Action Coalition to the budget. What is it? The Citizens Financial CFAC, Citizens Financial Advisory Committee, which Steve and I sit on. The Policy and Monitoring Committee, where we actually review all the policies. Shannon and I sit on that board, and then there's a multitude of others. So I think I personally sit on 4 committees. It depends on the time of year, but I would commit to maybe 3 meetings a month that I am doing committee work, and those are about an hour to an hour and a half, depending. Would you agree with that, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say that it's, as far as like actual in-person stuff, it's those board meetings and it's those engagement sessions. And for me, I'm, full-time working mom of 2. It hasn't been crazy intolerable, but a lot of it has been virtual too. So it's busy, but it's not back-breaking work. I don't know why I can't speak tonight, but Elise, can you?
Could I add something to that?
Yep.
I think it's the job of board members to be visible in the community too. And whether it's on your job description or not, I think it's important that you be at your school, at school events. Like this morning, I was in North Mankato to watch the girls softball team in the state tournament. Yeah, so doing stuff like that, I think is important. People are going to elect you, and they want to see you in the community. So, I think a lot of people don't understand that that's part of the role that goes on.
Well, and Steve, you kind of put us all to shame on that. I'm not going to lie. So you're very visible, and I love that, and it's great. All right. So the other piece of it, the next slide, Elise, the other piece of it is just kind of what do you have to do on your own time? And what I would say with that is, reading the, there we go. Outside of board meetings, there's a lot of, the learning curve is steep. I would say it's always going to happen, but Shannon and I, put in quite a bit of time when we first joined the board around understanding board process, learning about school funding streams. MSBA provides trainings for those, which is great, but there's a lot of learning and self-teaching too that you're going to want to do. There's a lot of acronyms, and I hate feeling dumb. So a lot of homework there. And then the board packets, they're dense, painful documents to go through. And so, but reading through those is really important. Now, I'm not going to lie, Steve, I trust you implicitly, so I don't read every page of the financial ledgers.
Oh, come on. Really?
I don't do it. So I do skip the financial ledgers because I trust Steve implicitly. But, reading through those packets, reading through the policies, especially what's on the consent calendar. And those are the things that you're approving really without discussion at the board table. So making sure that you are aware of those prior to giving your consent. So that's kind of the outside of school work, right?
They usually run about 100 to 300 pages.
Yeah, like 70 of those are the ledgers, though.
True.
It's usually reading about 30 or 40 pages of stuff. If you have insomnia, you guys are going to be like really well suited for reading board packets. I'll put you right to sleep.
Katie, you mentioned MSBA, and then you mentioned acronyms.
Minnesota School Board Association, right? We really get into our acronyms. So, but the Minnesota School Board Association supports us in a lot of our work. So, and I think the next slide yeah. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to say that I was very intimidated by the board packet when I was sitting in the chairs that you're sitting in right now, and they are not as intimidating as I thought they were going to be. So don't let that stop you from moving forward.
But they are that boring.
I think numbers are fascinating.
I know. Next slide, please, Elise. Oh, this is where you start, Steve. Mm-hmm. Sure. So the question was with the on the previous slide, the question about setting policy and holding the district accountable. So I think a really good one of that was we just actually created a new policy that we adopted at the end of the school year for gender inclusion. So we got a lot of input from our community, from our students. Usually MSBA will advise us and inform us on our policy work, but we felt there wasn't one at the Minnesota School Board Association level. So we took it upon ourselves to draft and get input on a gender inclusion policy around really supporting our trans students, gender non-binary students. So we drafted that and then adopted it as a school board. We approved that fully, right? That made it through on our last meeting? Yeah, so fully adopted it. And now at this point, it's up to the district, so Rhoda and her cabinet, to take that and to build out trainings and to build out operating procedures in order to support that policy. And so we will continue to follow that and see those things as they roll out, but we need to hold the district accountable for ensuring those policies are implemented moving forward, right? So that's pretty rare, I think, that we would create a whole new policy. Usually what we're doing is reviewing existing policies. We made a commitment at the end of 2020 school year, so May of 2020, to review all of our policies with equitable lens and ensuring that everything had an anti-racist focal point on it and changing anything that didn't. So moving forward, I think the big one that we'll see as far as reviewing policy and ensuring that it's followed through with the district is probably going to be around our discipline policy and ensuring that we take a good hard look at that one. So.
speaking of policies, here's policy 209. It's on school board code of ethics and operating principles. And there's some things that you commit to as being a member of the school board. One of them, the main one being attend school board meetings, but come to the meetings prepared, listen respectfully to the opinions and views of others, vote your conscience after an informed discussion, unless you have to abstain because of a conflict of interest. In my case, my wife was a part-time teacher for the first, 8 years, 6 years, 7, for my first 2 terms. And I could not vote on any teacher contracts. So anything involving teachers, because she was covered by it, I couldn't vote on. So I don't know what your individual situations are, but if you have that, you have to abstain. One of the things that we agree on is that we support the decision of the school board, even if you have a dissenting opinion. So it's kind of like being on the Supreme Court. You know, they issue an opinion. There's dissenters, perhaps, but everyone agrees that going forward, we support the decision. Recognize the integrity of the predecessors and associates. Be motivated by a desire to provide the best possible education for students. And that's really what drives me, and I think that's what drives everyone on the board, to give our students the best possible education. And to inform myself about proper duties and functions of a school board member, which you're doing right now. There'll be more as you go through training, but those are some things that you're responsible for. And like I said, you get to engage in, you are expected to engage with members of your community. You get to work with a great team to lead transformational change. You get to witness learning taking place throughout the district. I've been in many classrooms and watched some innovative things happen in our schools. It's really, really heartwarming. You get to celebrate student and staff achievements, and hopefully we'll go back to doing that in person this coming year. Participate in conferences and professional development opportunities. There's a ton of those, some of which the district, the board participates in as a whole, others that you might attend individually. And then you do get a card that lets you into all district arts and sporting events for free, except for ice hockey, I found out, because ice time is very expensive. But other than that, but that's only for district events. If it's state events like I was at this morning, you pay the full freight. You don't get any benefit from that. So, and you do earn a stipend. Right now it's 5,000. I don't know. So 5,000 and change a year, spread out over the year, which equates to about 50 cents an hour for the time you put in. I'm being a little facetious. It's not that much compared to, but there's some school districts where the board gets paid nothing. So, I mean, that is somewhat of a benefit. Other districts pay a lot more than we do. But, so that's a benefit. And here are the key dates. If you're really serious about this, you have between July 27th and August 10th to file. And then you have 2 days to think about it. And if you decide, no, I didn't really want to sign on for this, you've got until August 12th to withdraw. Absentee voting for the general election begins on September 17th. One of the main events that happens every election year for candidates is a League of Women Voters Candidate Forum. And this year, I guess they've already scheduled it. It's on September 20th. And I don't know where it's going to be this year. It's in the past, it's been at the Minnetonka City Hall, but I've also been to ones at the Hopkins City Hall. So I'm not sure which one, or maybe they'll move it somewhere else. I don't know. And then general election day is November 2nd. and then you get 2 months to learn your job before you get sworn in on January 4th. So that's kind of the schedule of events. You have to be a resident of the district to run. I don't know if, we get people that are open enrolling into the district and they are not eligible to be on the school board. You have to be a physical representative of the district. So I hope you all are. Reside here? Okay.
Shannon?
I would also say, too, there is a policy around being employed by the district. So you can only earn $8,000 as an employee of the district. So just
Which
so you're
you
aware
are.
of that.
You are an
Yes,
employee.
I am. Yes.
Very substitute teacher.
There's a question and that's come through. Can I ask
Yeah.
that right now?
Sure.
The question is this: can you speak a little bit about campaigning? For example, advice, resources.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all probably could. Do you want to go first, Shannon?
Sure. Well, campaigning can be hard, but it doesn't have to be. The school district is big, and actually, Steve, you, I think, have the numbers of just how many voters are contained within the Hopkins School District. It's a lot. And so
Over 50,000.
yes. So there's a lot of ground you need to cover, literally, but also, lots of doors to knock if you want to do that. There are different community events. So making your decision early on in the summer is probably a good idea, because a lot of Hopkins community events happen over the summer that you can be a part of. I know there's like the Raspberry Festival. There's stuff going on at the farmers markets, both in Golden Valley and in Hopkins. So there's lots of different ways to kind of start getting your name out there. There's the list from the Secretary of State that they have to provide you of all the voting records that would be around the district. So they parse it out for you around the school board district, and you can use that to contact people however you want to do canvassing, or you can send out mailers, you can knock on doors. I don't know if there's setting up a website is a really good idea. Starting a Facebook page, social media pages are really good. And you'd want to get that done because now Facebook has some restrictions around political candidates. So you need to get their approval before you can start posting. So I wouldn't wait till the last minute to do that.
Fundraising.
That's a big one. Postage is really expensive, so you actually have to apply beforehand to get a reduced fee for postage if you don't want to pay the full rate to send out a mailer to everyone in the district. But yeah, what else? There's services that can provide kind of more targeted email campaigns, but that's more in the weeds. You can ask me if you have any questions. You can also do Google ads. Anything I missed?
It's an ever-evolving
It is.
Skywriters. I mean, I don't know how much it costs, but there's all kinds of different options for it.
And it is fun to knock on doors. I think you really get to know the district and the families that you serve by doing it. I know it's not everyone's jam, but I really enjoyed it a lot. Yeah. After I stopped talking about myself and I just wanted to get people out to vote. I was like, I don't care who you vote for, just vote. so then it became a lot of fun, and you get to talk about Hopkins Public Schools, which, you know, is a great thing, and people talk to you about their kids and family, and it's good. It's fun. Oh, and lawn signs.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one.
Right. And there are rules about those too.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, but they're different in every city.
Yes.
So you have to make sure you know what the ordinance is in every city where you want to place a sign.
Well, and all of those are included. So when you come and submit your application or intent to run, they give you a packet. And all of those like state rules and regulations are included in that. So as far as tracking your finances, all that campaign mumbo jumbo is all there in that book. So you have a lot of information there. For me, I mean, I think it's really important to campaign in a way that feels authentic to you too. For me, that was really important. I didn't have made a career shift since, but I was traveling internationally. I didn't have the time to do the community outreach that Shannon did, and so I went really in a different direction through smaller group gatherings. I did a lot of Facebook advertising, attended events, and just hoped for the best as far as word of mouth. But I just didn't have the bandwidth. Shannon ran a robust campaign. I was so like, I'm toast, right? Because I was so intimidated by how robust Shannon's campaign was. But for me personally, I didn't have the bandwidth to do it. And I was in IT, so being more strategic about how I did things online felt more authentic to me too. And just more in my comfort zone. So everybody's going to do it a little bit different. There's no like perfect answer, right. I would say. So. Yeah.
Well, and like Shannon said, I think the most fun I had was going door to door, knocking on doors and talking to people. You'll hear some crazy stuff sometimes, but I had two former students tell me that they would vote for me if I brought back chicken nuggets at the high school. What? Yeah. But anyway, it led to a good discussion about school nutrition. So, but I think it's fun, and one of the other benefits of being a school board member that it wasn't mentioned before is that you get some visibility in the community. I'm on a first name basis with most of the mayors or city managers for every city that we serve. Also our legislators, but that's a lot of an outcropping of of working on the Legislative Action Coalition. So if you've got something that's of concern to you, they will pick up the phone and answer your phone call. Once you're an elected official like they are, you get their attention. So that's one of the nice side benefits of being on the board, or any elected position for that matter. So.
What other questions?
Yeah. Katie worked so hard on this.
This was the one slide I put together. And I think it just goes to show how creative I am. Very proud of that.
Was this actually in their packet?
No.
Okay. All right.
No. $4 years.
So they just asked how long the term was.
Yes.
Yeah, so 4 years, and then you have to run again.
Yep. So this term there are 3. Yeah, we're not. We're not. This term there are 3 open seats. As far as incumbents, as far as we know, Jen Bouchard is the only incumbent running. So there would be 2 seats open. There are 3 seats open, but only one incumbent running, as far as we know, right? Yeah.
As far as I know.
She has announced her intent to run. I don't think I just stole her thunder.
No. It was in the paper.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Anything coming in? No comments on the slide, like how good looking it is or anything?
No further comments in the chat. I'll keep looking.
By the way, I'm a dork. Are we done then? Oh, yeah. 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 So the question is really, kind of more detail around roles and responsibility, what the day, maybe what a day in the life of a school board member looks like. I mean, I think we could each speak. I will tell you, the last 2 years, there are so many examples so when we're talking about like the budgeting stuff, right? And that as we go through the process, we start talking about budgets in November and talking about preliminary budgets, at which point we really start to hone in and understand what it's going to look like and where we might have to make shifts. And at those points, we're getting presentations and we're really absorbing where we might have extras, where there might be opportunities to revise. And as a board, we spend quite a bit of time hearing about the numbers, but then also understanding where those dollars are going to and funneling to. So then we get let's say we get a preliminary idea of what the budgeting cuts are going to look like. So last year it was the gifted and talented redesign into a more inclusive program. At that point was when the community engagement really started. So there were listening sessions where we were there answering questions as best we could. There were listening sessions for us where we are asking questions as much as we could about what that looked like to really understand it. In the end, the only action we could take was really approve or deny. But there was a lot that went into understanding. For me personally, I really dug into what the traditional gifted and talented model looked like, both in Hopkins and across the board in other schools, and how that could be revamped. And I looked a lot at the current gifted and talented program demographics against the Hopkins Public Schools demographics as a whole. So what I did was probably very different than what Shannon did in order to ready myself, but we were both part of those community engagement sessions. We were both answering those questions and frankly getting questions from the community that we could bring back to Rhoda or to Torero or to Ann Ertl, the interim director of innovation, design and learning. It was, when we're talking about COVID, a lot of it was coming together to determine, all the decisions around closures came from the state level, right? But we had to really figure out how to support our teachers during, in approved times that what are things going to look like for our teachers and our families and stuff. That was all decided, by Rhoda. But as a board, we approved funding and we, had to do really the high level stuff. When it came down to the murder of George Floyd, as a board, we created a resolution to take an anti-racist lens to all of our work, and we approved that. In the fall, we asked a student task force to present to us on holistic school safety and police in our schools and make recommendations around that. What are the other big things we've addressed in the last year, Shannon?
There's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of it is about really finding your passion and your area that you really want to know a lot about, but also one of the things I forgot to mention that I think is really important about board work is representing your community at the board table, and you do that through asking those questions that Katie was talking about and guiding the discussion through the questions that you ask and really showing up and representing the people who have, a similar experience to yours. Like when I'm looking at things that are coming before the board, I'm always keeping in mind my experience with Hopkins Public Schools as a family and all those things that, we've experienced along the way, but also what my community members tell me their experiences. And so really being that kind of representative at the table. But also a lot of it comes down to educating yourself as well. And one of the things that I think is really nice about Hopkins that they do for board members is they really invest in you as a board member. And so you get lots of trainings. You get to go and, not only the Minnesota State, I'm doing it wrong, MSBA, Minnesota State Board Association, School Board Association. You get to go to all of their trainings, and you can choose different topics, but we also do the National School Board Association. So you get to go and hear from people across the nation. There's wonderful opportunities locally in Minnesota. We just did a student centered learning for equity conference, wrote a presented one there, and then we did it on the redesign of the school student school board rep program happened this year as well. That was a big thing, and it's innovative across. I don't think there's any other school board rep program like that in the nation, actually, that Hopkins has created. And so you kind of find out where you fit and what you're bringing, and then represent your community. I feel like I'm rambling.
No, but that goes right back, Sarah, to your first question about hierarchy and what we totally missed, which is that we report to the community, right? So sure, Rhoda reports to the board, but we report to the community, right? And so in the end, it's this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. And so when we sit at the table and ask questions, those are because of not just us, right? It's not our personal interests at the table. It's the personal interests of those who have come to us as their elected officials to represent them. And sometimes those people will be coming with issues like, we don't have a way of doing the math homework at home, right? But it's our job as school board members to direct them and give them the tools to solve that problem, which would be, go to your principal. And if you can't figure it out with your principal, let's go to, innovation, design, and learning, because there's a problem with the curriculum if you're not able to access it with the tools that you're being given, right? And so it's understanding how to help and find those voices and find those right tools to fix the problems. Mm-hmm. Yep, or quickly answer their question for them. I mean, more often than not, it's like, I don't get this. Can you help me understand? And that thing that I've noticed that's really awesome about being on the Hopkins School Board is that it's very rarely about their individual students. The thing about being on the Hopkins School Board is they truly view, I've never had it where it's only about Meadowbrook and they only want it to focus on Meadowbrook, or only about their student. It's truly, the parents have this really amazing forward-thinking, all-inclusive sort of mindset. So you don't get those little things very often, honestly, or at least I haven't personally. But
well, I just tell you, if you've got any preconceived ideas coming in about something that you want to see get done and be an advocate for, be ready to change your mind. Because I can give as an example, based on feedback I was getting from the community and my own personal beliefs. When I got elected, I thought we need to lower the class sizes. And then, Nick did Nick Lightfoot, was an assistant superintendent, did an analysis and brought it to the board and showed how much it was going to cost to reduce student size by one student in every class. It was astronomical. So I backed off on that because we just don't have the money for that. The state does not give us the money to do that. So, and quite honestly, Hopkins has always been very cost effective. We spend very little on administrative overhead, less than most of our surrounding school districts. So there was no real place to cut there. But, you know, there were some things that we did in the first years that I was proud of. We put devices in the hands of every student. We started out the junior high, then we went down to the elementary, and then the high school. And boy, what would have happened this year if we hadn't done that? You know, that would have been disastrous. And I know districts in this state that did not prepare for that. You know, they had to go out and spend millions of dollars to acquire tablets and iPads and Chromebooks and whatever for their students. So that's something where we invested early on and made the commitment to that. So those are the kinds of things that you can, prepare for. The other thing, we've spent over $100 million over the last 10 years on air quality in our schools. Believe it or not, that became an issue. You know, who would have thought that that was going to be such a big issue in this year? So we've got probably the best air quality of any school district in the state right now. So what's that? Yeah. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that you don't think about when you get on the school board, but all of a sudden you start to look into the future and see what might be coming, and you change your mind on those things quickly. So
there is an additional question, and it's not about being on the school board.
Oh.
It is about how our girls did today. So we did lose. We lost the game this morning on a walk-off home run in the last inning.
With the last out.
Yes, competing against Centennial. So the final score was 5-3. And I heard a little bit about the speech that Lauren Granger provided to the team. She's an all-Metro player named by the Star Tribune, and she talked to the girls and just talked about how proud she was to be on the team, and that she was so proud for them, taking the game as far as they could and never giving up. And it was a speech that I think was very moving, even for the adults who were in the midst.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any other details to share.
I was
about
not
the game.
in the midst of that, but I didn't see tears, I have to say. I think they have every reason to be proud of the season that they had.
Absolutely. And our boys, so baseball is going to state, and I think they're playing. They're probably playing right now in Chaska, right?
Right.
And then we have some kids on the track and field team going to state over the weekend. And then I think we have 1 or 2 golfers who are also going to state.
Yeah.
So lots to be proud of after a really challenging student athlete experience, really this whole COVID year. There's a lot to be proud of, and our kids are just amazing and resilient. So thanks for that question. And after that question, I don't see any more.
O'Shea out. We good? All right. Ta-ta.
Okay, thanks to our community. Enjoy your evening,
If you have
everyone.
more, our email addresses are on the website.